This is a video response to Voices in the Head's video, Principles. Hello there. Your video is interesting, but it seems to me a little confused. Maybe this is because my definition of freedom of speech is possibly different to yours, but I do think that you choose such radical examples that I can't think of any instance where the principle of freedom of speech is legitimately used to defend incitement to violence. Freedom of speech for me ends at the point where discussion of a subject becomes incitement to harm or unlawfully repress others, whether physically, mentally or practically, or possibly where it endorses such behaviour. Freedom of speech does, however, encompass the right to talk about and discuss all matters, no matter how wrong you think that opinion is, as long as you don't cross the line that I've just stated. For example, it's within the boundaries of freedom of speech to say that you think Islam is unjust, barbaric and just plain wrong. But when you state that all Muslims should be repressed or killed, then you cross the boundary into incitement to unlawful acts. As for hate speech, well, how do we even define hate speech? Can there be a solid definition of hate speech? Some of your own videos could be defined by some as hate speech, where you may believe, rightly or wrongly, that it's commentary. The moment we start censoring opinion that we don't like is the moment we start limiting our ability to discuss and progress through civilized debate. The ability to discuss any subject and express unpopular or dissenting opinion is vital to the free world, and this is how we mature as a populace. Historically, on so many occasions, what may have been a minority opinion at one time is now mainstream. Those opinions or principles may have been at the time unpopular or even considered dangerous, but are now accepted. Science has provided many of these moments. This is not to say that all opinions are valid or a part of progress, but discussion leads to acceptance or refusal of these ideas, and society hopefully matures as a result. This is why, for the most part, I support Phelps's right to spout his venomous bullshit. So long as he doesn't, for instance, advocate or encourage the murder of gays, then he can by and large express his opinion, and we can reject his rantings for the unenlightened Bronze Age crap that it is. In this regard, I personally define hate speech as such speech that incites action to unlawfully repress and harm others. Other expression of dislike and derogatory statements may fall into the category of hateful or disrespectful speech by the definition of the offended party, but not hate speech. Hateful speech differs in that it would not break any laws regarding incitement to unlawful or threatening behaviour. This would be permitted in terms of freedom of speech, which allows the right to insult. This is not a watertight definition, but it's the best I can come up with it at this point. As such, with these definitions, I do not think that the concept of hate speech need exist, since laws already exist that deal with all aspects of the definition I have given. You also talk about principles as if they're integral to freedom of speech, where I would argue that freedom of speech, although a principle in structure, is without principle in practice. For instance, the principle that murder is wrong and rape is wrong should not prohibit the discussion of the subjects. As way of an example, the idea that a murder may be considered just in some circumstances is not the same as saying we should go out and murder. This is the distinction: discussion of an unlawful act and incitement to an unlawful act. When a censored video is re-uploaded, it's not always because its content is agreeable to those who re-upload it. In the case that Naomi was involved in, where DPR Jones and others re-uploaded the Amazing Muslims video, it was not because his opinion was agreeable. It was because he had made a fair, however disagreeable, response to Naomi's video, and having it withdrawn seemed rather censorious. As it wasn't an attempt to breach copyright, it was a legitimate response. I use this example not to piss you off, but just because it's a relevant and clear example of what you asked, and honestly to me seems to be the thing that probably got you thinking about the subject in the first place. To summarise my answer to your question, freedom of speech is to be upheld regardless of the subject or opinion of the speaker in all cases other than where actual incitement to unlawfully harm a person or group of people is made. Disagreement with an opinion, however distasteful, is no reason to censor.